Our next session is elderly and mobility. And to lead us through this session and walk us through it is our session lead, Carol Agengo from HelpAge. Carol?
Welcome to this session, Lawrence.
Yes.
My name is, and welcome to the participants. My name is Carol Agengo, and I'll be moderating this session. And with me, I'm happy to have Lawrence, who I will ask to introduce himself. And before Lawrence does, I work with HelpAge International. We work with the older people. We work for the health, dignity and well-being of older people. And so I'm happy to see you, Lawrence.
Yes.
And you could just introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Lawrence Mungai Munywa. I also work with the elderly people. We have got the society called Elderly Society of Kenya. Currently, I'm the chair. We rotate the chairmanship for after 3 years. So it's an organization that basically deals with the elderly people. In Kenya, we don't have any jurisdiction where we say we operate from. So right now, where I'm seated, I'm in Kikuyu. Kikuyu is in county of Kiambu, Republic of Kenya. Thank you, and I will be more willing to participate. Basically, we are talking about the transport issue and the challenges, isn't it?
Thank you. Yes, that's what we're talking about. And maybe to just start us off, I'll ask, you say you stay in Kikuyu, which is on the outskirts of Nairobi. And I believe that you have business to transact in Nairobi city center on and off. Tell us about your experiences in how you do get to the city. What are some of the things you notice in terms of the transport system that would be peculiar to older people?
Yes, when we talk about the Kikuyu being not in Nairobi, sometimes it is not true. It is part and parcel of Nairobi. In fact, now we are in the metropolitan Nairobi area. But all along, we worked, we schooled, we do our business in Nairobi. I grew up in this periphery of Nairobi, yes. The challenges mainly for transport from Kikuyu to another surrounding areas is that if you start there, is that older people, but do you want my personal experience or the experience I've gathered over the years with working with the older people? Because
you can tell us a bit about your personal experience and then experience with older people as well.
Yes. But let me say my age now is 68 years. So I am what they call, I'm a retired person. I used to work in the hotel industry now. But I got a small business in Nairobi. So I trek from Nairobi to Kikuyu, usually 3 days in a week. So the major problem about the transport system is that all public transports in a country is privately owned. And therefore, the policy of whether the transport will charge what amount, whether the vehicle will have what kind of seats, whether the vehicle will travel at what time, the challenges are there. That the transport system is in the public sector is privately owned. So you don't have one matatu, as they are popularly known here in Kenya, which look like the other one. The other thing, there is no time schedule. Like now, if I want to go to Nairobi, I am going to the bus stop to wait for whatever time it will come. So no time schedule. The other thing is that there is no prescribed price fare. Sometimes you go, it is 50 bob. Sometimes you go, it's 80 bob. All those are challenges with the older person particularly. you know, the young people are now driving this industry of public transport. And therefore, the challenges of older person is mobility. So they want you to board the matatus or the vehicle in a hurry. They want you to alight in a hurry. So that is another biggest challenges with the older persons. Look, I've mentioned about the fare. Whoever will facilitate me to go to town or to market or to hospital, because those are the centers where people go to. Normally, the older people, they travel to the market, to hospitals, to churches. Whoever facilitates me to go to there, he give you maybe, let's say, for instance, 100 bob. Then you go and board a matatu, is 50 shillings. When you are coming back, it is 80 shillings. So I had so the challenges. So the fare is not, you know, standardized.
Yeah.
I would say, with a lot of respect, is that it is important to say, thanks to COVID-19, that the seating capacity of most of us now, you can sit comfortably. You also, you also are not squeezed.
Yes.
Those things, you know, it's a challenge we have for the pandemic, but you see, we may look at it in the positive side, that it have, you know, we can have people that we can sit dignified in those vehicles.
Yes.
And also now there is enough time to exchange this. I'm paying this month, because other than that one, you know, as you are aware also, the matatu, like the matatu moving from Nairobi to the Eastland, and they carry 3 times the capacity. So even that is squeezing the elderly people is a big challenge. Yeah. So maybe possibly those are my main challenges, and I'm sure even the other older people are also facing the same.
Okay. So you raised very interesting issues about just the movement from where places of residence to the city, if you have business to transact in the city. So I'd like us to look at it from that perspective, and then I'll go back to the aspect of the rural areas as well. But talking about the challenges of the matatus, you've talked about challenges of getting to the bus stop, then they're not, they do not pay attention to the time, they come whenever they wish. But when those matatus do come, are they easy for older people to get on board? Are the matatus or even the transport system, is it such that it facilitates an older person with a wheelchair, for example, or an older person who's using crutches? How easy is it for them to get onto that, into those public vehicles?
Let me start with that one. That is the people with those challenges, real disabilities, like people moving with the classes, people moving with the wheelchairs. For those one to go, for instance, if you are moving with a wheelchair and you are employed, like anybody, I bet you cannot be around in a matatu at 8 in the morning, what we call the peak hour, because it is difficult for you to be lifted up. It is difficult for, and these people, you know, they work like the norm is halaka, you know, faster. That's the norm. So I bet that if you are moving with a wheelchair or a classes and you are working, there are people who are employed, I bet you don't get on job on time, because most of the matatu will deny you the access because of the time frame that you take from boarding and the same alighting. The other thing is also and then it cascades to the other elderly people like myself and the other people. The elderly people, when the matatus come, because there is no policy of how to board and to alight, the younger people have to rush and, you know, get inside. So I don't have that energy and the mobility to squeeze and in. So it's a struggle. It's a big struggle to want to go. In fact, I can tell you for sure, I don't since I left employment, I don't go with a matatu from 8 in the morning until 10 or 11. That's when I travel. Because in the morning, you are going to waste your time wasting in the bus stop.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenges. And I pity the people who have got that severe disabilities and they are employed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And how about once you've gotten into town, you've braved the system, you've gotten onto the matatu, you've gotten yourself into town. How do you move from one place, one office to another? Are there walkways in such a way that it's easy for old people to move around? Is it easy for you to move from, say, the bus park into the city center? What are some of the realities that you face once you get into the destination, especially into the city center?
Yeah, let's see. That's another challenge. The route, like now, let's say now, I am take my example still. I'm moving from Kikuyu and I want to go to Kenyatta Hospital.
Yes.
I'll be dropped to Odeon Cinema.
Yeah.
Means if I'm sick and I'm unable to walk or I have problem of the eyesight because of challenges with the other people, I have to look for another stage which you have the matatu to take me to Kenyatta Hospital. So there is no connected. So the policy maker, they don't connect those matatu from this end to that end so that I can connect one end to the other one. And you can see now the challenges of those people with severe disability, like wheelchair classes. It's a big walk you are going to walk. Secondly, and this is very bad, that the matatus stop and they can stop and pick, they can drop anywhere and time. If, for instance, they are going in the last hour and they find there is a big jam and there are only 5 or so people left, they will drop you. They will drop you and they can do a U-turn and come back. So those are all challenges with the elderly person, and particularly if you got the challenges of the mobility, the eyesight, and maybe possibly you are going to hospital, you are sick, then you are left in an area where you are like an alien. You don't know where to get the other one, and also the financial constraint comes in because you have now to pay to get to the other destination, so you get that to your proper destination that you are to go in the morning.
Okay. And let's move away now from the transport system a bit and touch on you've gotten into your destination at what do you call it, Kenyatta Hospital, for example. And what if you've gotten to Kenyatta Hospital, you need to go upstairs to the 4th floor. You're going to the ward number 4D. How do you get from the bus park to the hospital onto the ward? Is it easy as well for you to move around? Because I want us to look at what are some of these infrastructural challenges that then stand in the way of older people getting access to where they need to get access to.
Yeah, even one more point before we go there, that we should be grateful a little bit. We have seen the Nairobi Central Business District. The government of the day is doing a good work, putting a big wide footpath that people can walk, easily walk. Because it's better to walk in a good footpath without being crowded or being fear of being knocked by a vehicle. An institution like Kenyatta Hospital is a little bit better structured initially. There is a better mobility for the elderly people than most of others. But still, there is a challenge. Like when you go to Kenyatta Hospital, the bus park and the distance to where the buildings are, there is a distance. But I would say in Kenyatta Hospital in particular, the structure was done with a little bit of mind with the elderly people and the people with disability, because even the stairs, there is the drive stairs, which are wide enough, and there is a big lift, which are almost equal to this room. So there, I would say, yes, those things should be cascaded to the other infrastructure, like hospitals and the like.
Okay. So now let's move back to the rural areas, because a lot of older people, especially in Kenya, are engaged in subsistence farming. And also for those who are in gainful employment, you retire, you go back, unarudi mashambani, you go back to the village. Mm-hmm. How easy is it for older persons to move around? And here I want us to look at it from the broad perspective in terms of the availability of public transport, if it exists, the infrastructure, the roads, etc. How easy is it for older people to move around individually and also to transport their produce, to move to the markets, etc.?
The rural area has challenges that are a little bit unique to the urban areas. One, the road system. There are no good roads, so there are no many vehicles. So some of the impoverished vehicles, like the handicapped and other cars driven pushed by people and things like that one, they help the people to move their produce. But the final end, you end up at the road. And the road, you get now in the same problem with the matatus. Now, the other thing is, in the rural area, is also a bit better, slightly better, because people can move easily, they can walk easily, from one destination to another, although the destinations are slightly longer where we are. And as I said before, the people move from, why do the people move? They go looking for services like hospital, market, churches, weddings, and things like that ones. So the matatus in the rural areas are a little bit better, but they are very crowded. They are better in terms of the language. The literacy, the language, sometimes is not very good in Nairobi, in the urban areas for the elder. But in the rural area, those things you can take heart, at least even if I'm squeezed. This person was nice to me, talking to me, because that is another demoralizing thing. Somebody because you are old, you are even not supposed to travel. It's like we are giving you mercy to travel. So the rural challenges are slightly different because, and also people know each other. Let's say, for instance, if I move around Kikuyu constituency, and I'm moving with a matatu, there is likelihood I may know a conductor or a driver, or since we are talking the same mother tongue, maybe possibly I can tell tafadhali, maybe drop me somewhere near where I'm going. So the language is okay, but the mode of vehicle, the seating capacity inside, even the squeezing when you are entering those vehicles, they are not designed for the older person.
Okay. And you mentioned an interesting thing, which I'd like us to speak about a little bit. In the city, and this is where you're making the comparison between the city and the rural areas. You say that in the city, at times, they make you feel that they're doing you a favor by moving you from one place to another. So you basically say you're targeted because of your age. The reason they're treating you that way is because of your age. Or do they treat everybody in the same way?
I would think because of the age, and particularly I pity my colleague, the women. Sometimes those young people, they talk very good language to somebody who is 70 and you feel it. You like to feel it. Well, why do you have to tell her that way? The language is very, very uncouth.
Okay.
And so basically, it's they treat, the question is, do they treat the others? No, they treat the elderly.
Yeah. So there's you probably are aware of ageism, where you're targeted simply because of your age. You're discriminated against. You are treated unfairly because of your age. So basically, you've brought in an interesting component, which is the gender component. So in addition to being treated badly because of your age, you're also more targeted because you're a woman. That's what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And have you experienced any violence, or do you know if older people experience violence in the transport system, whether it's in the city or in the rural areas? Do they get robbed? Do they lose their luggage? Are there incidences such as that in the transport system?
Those are very frequent because one is when you pay as an elderly person.
Yeah.
When you pay and they say, okay, I'll give you change in a little while. You know, my memory is not now on the changes. My memory is on where am I going to be dropped. So by the time I'm getting there, I'm writing from the vehicle. The vehicle has gone. My change, that's a violence. The others they go like the old mama with the kiondo. And you know, as I said, the norm is hurry. So by the time because you are going to go slowly to a right, by the time you are writing, the vehicle and your kiondo is, or your basket is taken. So that is very common. That is very common.
Okay. So now I'd like us to move towards some of the solutions that can help address the challenges that you've mentioned. Mm-hmm. What, in your view, should be done to address? You've mentioned several challenges. The time issue, the fact that the vehicles are not suitable for older persons, especially those with disability, the timing of the vehicles, the violence and abuse that happens in these systems. And the fifth point that I've noted is ageism, where you're simply targeted because you're an older person. So what, in your view, are some of the things that can be done to begin to tackle or to address some of these issues?
You know, most of the things are addressed from the policy point of view.
Yes.
I don't think there is any. If there is any policy on public transport. If there is any, and if there is, it is not adhered. I would say I recommend we have a policy of public transport. And when this policy is being discussed, the older person are included to contribute, like I'm contributing. Yeah. Because to me, like those 14-seater matatus, to me, I would say they should be phased off. Yeah. Let's put them off and introduce a bus which can carry 60 people or thereabout. Yeah. Why the bus will take time to go to a bus stop and stop. The bus will take time to wait for people to board. And the bus will be designed that the entrance is big enough. I can see you are big. They are big enough so that you can enter easily, not when squeezed. And the seats are better. People who are older like me, they remember the Kenya bus services. They used to have, upper space for sitting, and even upper space for standing. So those kind of a bus, I would say that was what we should recommend. And also the interconnecting routes, so that by those days, mentioning the Kenya bus services, those days you could go board a bus in Jamhuri Estate, and you come all the way to Kenyatta Hospital or up to Kabete. So so you connect you board a bus that will connect to all your destinations. So that is those are some of the things that the government should do. The small matatu like the 14-seaters, those can fly from intercity, Mombasa, Nairobi, Nakuru. But in the metropolitan area, we should have buses that are there. But also, recommending some of the things that government is, some of the services can come to the people. Because why do you have to travel? You travel looking for the services. And then the bigger bus can now fly in the urban areas that with the distance connecting from one area to the other ones. And even those, as I mentioned earlier about the building the footpath, like big enough, this could cascade all the way to the estates and the informal sectors, because walking is also healthy. It's only when you are walking, you are now competing with the other people, competing with the vehicle, the boda and things like that. But if the footpath is designed like they have done it in a central business district in Nairobi, then fine. That's okay. Yes.
Okay. And what do you think can be done in terms of the security? Because you did mention there is some level of violence and abuse in the public transport system. What are some of the things you see that could be done to address this, especially in as far as it touches on older persons?
I have got a very strong belief that we cannot leave the public transport to individuals.
Yeah.
So yeah, there must be some kind of a company policy that will be enhanced by the government, or the government takes some kind of shares, like they used to have shares, maybe possibly in the Kenya Bus Services, or they have the shares in the Kenya Air is also a transport, but there must be a controlling factor that this is the standard that we want to use to play your business, and one of them is to put the moral aspect of it. You are doing business with the people. You have to be courteous. You have to have a standardized price. You have even to have a time factor. This bus, expect this bus at 11, and expect the last bus at maybe 5. That way, then we can have the sanity, particularly in the urban areas.
Okay. You mentioned something about borders. Before I come to our final question on the recommendations, tell us about the experience, because you had previously spoken about matatus and the buses, but there's this new phenomenon of borders. How is that affecting older persons?
That one I can tell you, I can recommend from the word go. If you are older, if you are 60 and above,
yes,
unless it's very, 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 very emergency, don't use a boda. The body, the body structure cannot hold the bumping.
Yes.
You bump this way, and then when you are dropped, you have another illness of the backache, like that one.
Yeah.
Also, the risk of this boda dropping you dead is very easy. So if you are 60 and above, please try to walk. It take you longer to, but you can have it. You can take it on emergency. Also, there are people who are older, but they are healthy. Like myself, I'm healthy, thank God. But I don't take matatu. And I also advise people who are older than that one, particularly in the, most of the boda don't travel in the good, smooth roads, although we don't have one in our country. So those bumpy things will bump your body, and you are likely to get another illness than the urgency of where you wanted to go. But we move out of that one. Let's think of the insurance.
Yes.
All public transports, I doubt, although I also use them, I doubt whether they have got the insurance cover for the passengers.
Yes.
The vehicles, I have dealt with people who are in the insurance company, and most of the vehicles are that departed insurance.
Yes.
And that one, what means you go and take care of your body, and I'll take care of my matatu. But that is how it is. So when the policy comes in, something like insurance is very, very important, because other people sometimes they misstep on their body and they can fall. or when they are lighting, or when they come across. And you know, there's nobody now to if you are older person to follow what happened to that accident and things like that one. And when the policy is there, is that a vehicle should have a good insurance cover that will cover the vehicle and will cover the passenger it is carrying. I don't think to enforce that one in this country.
Okay. On the insurance bit, I believe third party, at the very minimum, third party is compulsory for public service vehicles. And so there is insurance. I think probably the bigger challenge is how they, at times their insurance is not up to date and there's no vigilance on the part of the regulating authorities to ensure that the insurance is up to date. But I think there's some effort that is going on in that regard.
Okay.
But also with the boda problem, in the rural areas, there are many places where there is no public transport. For a long time in my village, for example, there was no matatu. So you had to use a boda, whether if you needed to go to the shopping center, which is about 11 kilometers away, that's a long way to walk, especially for an older person. So they were obliged to use the bodas. So I think it's an unnecessary evil, but it's a necessary evil. So if I may put it that way, yeah. But maybe just to also look at what recommendation would you have for the bodas? What can the government do to ensure that where that's the only form of transport, then it's a secure form of transport for older persons?
As you say, it is a new phenomenon, and sometimes it takes time to stabilize. Like now, I think the government is unable to control, and even how do you control how many are in a certain area? But that industry will stabilize as we go around. Me, that's what I would think. But like now, I think it is a new phenomenon, and everybody, particularly the young people, they want to get new coins here and there, and the competition is there. But as I said, even if it is in your rural area and you are an older person, unless it is very necessary that you have to go those 11 kilometers, I think don't use the boda. The likelihood of you, even if you go there and take you there in peace and bring you back, 1, 2, 3 times you start having other related issues because of that, uncomfortable journey.
Okay. So my final question will be in terms of, as you are making the recommendations, and then we broke off a bit to deal with the boda nuisance. You made some very good recommendations in terms of the policies and ensuring that the policies are adhered to. Where do you see the place of older persons in the development of those policies? In terms of the participation, what would you say to older persons in terms of their participation to ensure that they bring in their point of view in the development of these policies? And I say this because the technocrats in the policy-making processes, a lot of them are younger people. Maybe the oldest would be just before, even if they're just before retirement, they're probably in their late 50s, then you've got 35-year-olds to probably 60, who may not have the experiences that you've spoken about. So how do you bring these experiences to the policy-making process so that when they're making their policies, they have this in mind?
We cannot do anything other than the older person, whether the policy is being made, they should be included. That's the advocacy, that's the much we can do. But there is one thing that people who, like the lady I'm having company here with, she's young. When she look at me, she think I was born old. I was not born old. I aged. She also went to age. And there is a feeling that because I'm youth, I'm knowledgeable. Youth is not a qualification. You don't have a certificate of being youth.
Yes.
No, the knowledge and what you call the knowledge and the experience, it's a combination for you to make good policy and even to live better and things like that one.
Yeah.
Academic paper is not a knowledge. It's just an academic paper. Even if you got a degree, when you got a degree, you have got an academic paper of a particular subject that you know, but you are not knowledgeable. You get knowledge as you age.
Yes.
And people should understand, why do Americans are going to elect a president who is 70, 80 years? And there are young people there. So people should not think that old people don't have anything between their ears. They have got the knowledge. And also, actually, they have got the money to buy the matatu and to buy bus. So they should be included in the policy making because they are the people. And I'm telling you that by the time we came to another 2030 and there, where the vision 2030, you really not going to get so many people who are young.
Yeah, no, that's very good.
Yes.
Yeah. No, you've said it very well. And I think that would be a good place for us to end. Yes. And I'll just paraphrase what you've just said. That you said nobody is born old. The person who's helping you, who's with you, thinks you are born old, but the realization, and I think this is a very important point, the realization that the youth that we have, the current youth bulge that we have, and we have a lot of young people, they will grow old. And so it's very important that the policies and the decisions that are made today by the young people who are thinking that, who are making it with the young, with their youth in mind, or they need to also think ahead and know that they're going to move into a different age group. And it's therefore important that they work with older people who have the experience, who have the knowledge, and you brought a very interesting component, who have the money to be able to bring about policies that will help them, the youth of today. These policies will help them in the future. So that's very, very critical. But we've also raised the key points in terms of your recommendations for improving the public system, which I think are brilliant propositions in terms of reducing the number of 14-seater matatus, bringing back the bigger buses that are able to cater for more, but also which are able to cater to the needs of the full range of the population, old and young alike. You've raised issues of security in the public system, which has a great impact on the extent to which older people then engage in activities that require movement. You said at the beginning that right now, if you have to go to town, you wait for 10, 11 o'clock. So that means if you had an urgent thing at 8 a.m., you're highly disadvantaged because the public system does not facilitate your movement, your ease of movement in a secure way at that early morning stage. And that may be the time that you actually need to move around. You've also raised issues of the violence and abuse in the public system and the gender implications and how this plays out more disproportionately against older women as opposed to older men. So I want to thank you very much, Mr. Lawrence. And I hope that HelpAge will engage with your organization. You said it's the Association of Older People in Kenya. We will look out for you so that we see how we can collaborate around the ideas that you have and see how we can make it better for older persons, not only in the public sector, in the public transport sector, but also in other areas as well. So thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much, Carol and Lawrence. We have a lot of questions coming in directed at Carol and Lawrence. But before I go on, allow me to remind you that you can actually place your questions on our chat stream, and you can address these questions either to our panelists, to the speakers, or any of us here, and we'll be able to read them out and hopefully find solutions together. Now, Lawrence, there's some questions that have come in. Thank you so much. First of all, I like some of your wise words that you have used today, and you said, we are not born old, and being young is not a qualification. I think that is such a powerful statement, that as we plan for the future of our transport in future, we need to realize that we don't have to be comfortable now only. We need to be comfortable now, and in 20, 30, 50 years, when you're not able to have the strength we have now, so put on mechanisms that make sure that even then we enjoy public transport. Thank you very much. I see somebody else who also quotes you on the same, that you're not born old and being young is not a qualification. I guess you have been able to speak to our hearts. Thank you so much. One of the questions that has been a sentiment and a question is from Stamina Sundays, and she says, or he says, I'm not sure of the gender, they said, what do you people think should be done to the elderly? To me, I think every moving matatu should have 5 seats reserved for the elderly. Lawrence, what do you think of that? That every moving matatu should have 5 seats reserved for the elderly?
Thank you very much, and good morning. Well, first of all, it is also discriminative to say to reserve. It is better to say we have got a transport which is conducive to all of us to travel in. The previous discussion we had, we were talking about moving away from the 14-seaters, which is a bit cumbersome, to a bigger bus. And for our generation who have been there before, you know, there was those Kenya bus services, which we can take, you know, like an example. Those buses used to have upper space to sit and even to stand. So going forward, I would think that is the way to look at it, rather than saying we reserve. Possibly we can reserve seats for very severely physically disabled people. But well, in practice, old people are not disabled. They are only old. You know, they are people who can walk, who can, you know, the only thing that they look disabled more possibly is the mobility. They cannot move faster, but they can move. But there are people in our society who are very severely physically disabled. Those they need to reserve some seat for them. And also mention the pregnant mothers also, those kind of things. So those one, and those are courtesy. It is not okay. Some of them should be banned in the background of a courtesy than a, you know, as a force. You know, we reserve those ones because we have a pregnant mother, we have severe disabilities, but all the people should have, you know, upper place in the bus, in the transport that we are going to design, that will be flying, rather than, you know, serving basically for the elderly people. The elderly people, some of them like to sit along with their granddaughters, like the one I have today here. Some of them like to sit with their other friends. So it's not good, not a very good way to say we reserve them. They are not all that disabled, actually.
Mm-hmm. They're not disabled, they're just old. Yes, you also said that we the older persons should not use boda bodas. Now, for those of us who do not understand Swahili, boda boda is the Swahili word for a motorbike. And Lawrence was of the opinion that given the advanced age and the problems that might come to the elderly persons because of the advanced age, he would advise them to minimize the use of boda bodas. Now, an anonymous attendee has asked a question, or rather made a comment and said, references like boda boda, in quotes, nuisance, don't help with the situation. It's this attitude that makes the workers in the sector behave like in such a manner. After all, they are already labeled a nuisance. Let me read that again for you, Lawrence. Reference like boda boda nuisance don't help the situation. It's this attitude that makes the workers in the sector behave in such a manner. After all, they're already labeled a nuisance. In your opinion, Lawrence? Boda bodas, are they already a nuisance? Like before you even aboard one? What are your thoughts?
I think that is the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
To say they are nuisance is the extreme, because I think they supplement the transport.
Mm-hmm.
It is the way that they supplement, maybe look like the nuisance. I would not go to the extreme of saying they are nuisance, but they have supplemented the transport, particularly in the rural area. They have really helped.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that any industry, any workforce should be regulated, should have a policy, should have a guidance. And I think that is what we are maybe possibly lacking. So I will not go there, say they are nuisance. I will definitely say they supplement the transport system. And the only thing that may be possibly where they look more of a nuisance than a transport is when they mingle, like when you go to the city centers and the like, you find that they are mingling in the middle of there, and so if they are well regulated, and the transport general, public transport general is regulated, then motorbikes are going to be of much assistance in future. When I say that, I say older people don't use the motorbike. I'm not saying with an authority. I'm saying as an advice, because the challenges are more, the risks are more with the older person than with the younger people. But first of all, imagine how they ride. Another person, you take almost 5-10 minutes, to ride that motorbike. What about riding the same problem? When they take a corner, and another person is left and the other one is bending. So the challenges and the risks are more in the border. It is not in the that it should not use the motorbike.
Okay. What is that other question? Yes, somebody asked, what would, this is from Diana, what would a user-friendly transport system for the elderly look like to you?
Once again, I go to where I was, that I have got a strong feeling like there is what is muted in our country, that rapid bus transport. I have seen some design of those buses, and as I said, the old Kenya bus services is an example for people who have been there before. The design of the bus should be such that you can sit comfortably, you can have upper space. They have got a lower ramp for you to step in and step out, and also the friendliness is that a bigger bus are designated a bus stop, whereby they stop and there is a lamp that you can lamp in the bus. So that is not the case in the today transport in our country and in our urban center in particular. So the friendliness is the design of the particular public transport. And it should be a policy that if you are on the public transport, you should design your vehicle this way. That's what I think should be.
Carol, I don't know if you can hear me. Carol?
Yes, I can. Unfortunately, my video is not working. I don't know what has happened, but I can hear you.
Okay, no problem. We're just going to listen to you, despite the fact that we cannot see you. I want to ask the same question that has been asked to Lawrence. What does a friendly public system for the elderly look like for you?
I think when we talk about the public system, then we're talking about not only the vehicle, not only the means of transporting that system, but we're looking at it holistically. And earlier on in the interview, Lawrence did speak about the Kenya bus service that used to do circular trips. So you didn't have to break in between. And so I think looking at it from the perspective, purely from the perspective of an older person seeking to use public transport in Nairobi, I want to move from one end of the city to the other. And I do not want to break in between because of all the challenges that are related to that break, either moving my luggage around or the security issues, connecting from one vehicle to the other. So looking at it from that perspective, then I think we need to go beyond looking at the vehicle or the means of transport in that public system and begin to look at how the routes are planned, whether it takes into account the population, the population profile of the population within those routes, the kind of vehicles that will be on the road, because they're the 14-seaters, then they're the bigger matatus, and now we're seeing the reintroduction of the bigger buses. So I think the system would have to look at the prioritization or the effectiveness or the suitability of the different vehicles within a certain route, for example. Then the second issue is around the boda. It's a cheap means of transport, but it's not very secure for older persons based on what Lawrence shared, just the physical challenges of getting onto the boda and riding onto it on roads that are not always paved, especially in the rural areas. So there's need to look at the means that would be most suitable for those roads. For example, maybe look at the issues of tuk-tuks or what they use in India, the rickshaws, which is a boda with a hood, as someone once explained it to me. So there's need to look at it from that holistic perspective. Then the other bit is, while you're waiting for the transport, where are you waiting? Is there a bus stop? Does it have a sitting area? Is that sitting area suitable for older persons? Are the benches raised? Is there like a curb before you get to the sitting area? What about a person who has challenges, is using crutches or is using a walking stick? How do they get on top of the curb to get to the sitting area? So we have to look at it from that perspective.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. You've actually answered a question by Judy Gishuhi, who said, any idea of what the elderly can use in the rural areas, as Carol has said that some areas are not accessible, and you bring about the issue of tuk-tuks, which could be an option to substitute the bodabodas, given that they may not be very, very friendly to the elderly. Now, allow me to ask about the issue of language for the elderly. And Lawrence earlier said that sometimes you get into a public transport system and the language being used is not necessarily very friendly to the elderly. Now, have you experienced language barrier, not just in terms of it being disrespectful, but there being a problem that maybe you speak a certain vernacular language, given that we have very many tribes, and unfortunately, the persons in the transport system, be it the conductor, be it the driver, they are not able to hear you because of the language barrier. How do you go about that, Lawrence?
Oh, thanks. I think now we are kind of in Kenya universally using Swahili. So I think that is a very bad, there is no way you cannot communicate in our country. Well, there are older people, yes, in the rural area who may not have a stick of Swahili, but in that kind of rural area, they understand the language we are talking about. You know, the most things bad about the language is if it is vulgar. But if it's a question of looking for, show me the route or tell somebody to give me where to alight, that's okay. I think that the Swahili has helped us to unify the language, whether you are in whichever mother tongue you are going to use. But my biggest worry is how the either whether the vernacular Swahili or English, the vulgar language you use to the elderly people. It is an industry. You have to be courteous. You have to be polite. You know, that's my biggest worry. And even what Carlo has just shared, there is also the question of the music, the loud blaring music. The loud blaring music come with the same kind of the vulgar language, because you know, when I say that sound is very, very loud. I'm told I'm old. So you are old. So I have to atmosphere with the blaring beam. And coupled with that one is the obscene pictures you see on the screen on most of the matatus. And I wonder whether our government are doing any good when they around the matatus to use those screen with the obscene pictures and things like that when people are traveling. When I'm traveling with my grandchild, it becomes very shameful. Look at some of the pictures that people are bred at the matatus. So all these things come up with the policy and the design, and also mindful to other people. People the courteous should know that we are all mixed up in the age group. There is children, there is the old people, and therefore, when we are saying about the design of the buses, the design of the bus is one of the things should come with. If there is a radio, it comes as a package, and you are not going to add any extra things like the music. The blaring music is a real nuisance, particularly in the urban area.
Carol, I don't know if you can hear me, Carol.
Yes, I can.
Yes, on the same issue of language, and Lawrence mentions that sometimes the blaring music, the videos that are probably playing in matatus, because sometimes you have screens, are very uncomfortable for certain persons, and especially now that you're talking about the elderly in mobility. What are your thoughts on there being a policy where we say the government insists that this is there's a range between what can be played in the public transport systems that is family friendly? Would that be very restrictive or a very welcome idea?
Even before we go to whether it's restrictive or not, I think the possibility of implementing it seems a little remote to me right now, because I think the issue of public morality, because I think that's what it boils down to, is something that is very difficult to police. But I think there's certain things, and I'm going to switch the conversation very fast, but I think there's certain things that we can do, because the issue of the appropriateness of the content in the matatus is something that has been with us for a very long time, and not only in the matatus, in public spaces. That has been for a very long time, and it's going to be a difficult thing to police. But I think that the issue of how you treat any dissent to that content is a bigger issue. So if I'm in a matatu and I'm paying for it, then I have every right as the other 13 passengers. My right is equal to that of the 13 passengers, the other 13 passengers. It doesn't become less because I'm a woman or because I'm an older person. But what we see playing out often is that if the music is very loud and I raise my voice and I say the music is very loud, I'll be I'll be shushed like you're either you're old or old woman, where mama tulia or something like that. So that's the attitude. So I think the bigger issue for me is to change the attitude and make it unacceptable to target older persons in any way, because we have normalized targeting older persons and women with inappropriate, rejoinders when they raise an issue about something that they're not happy about. And I'll give you an example. I'm 52 years old. I was once at the airport, and it was very early in the morning, and JKA gets totally packed. And as we're waiting to go through, these two ladies cut the queue. They came and jumped the queue. And people murmured and said nothing. And I said, "Excuse me, there's a queue, please go back." And they just looked at me and I insisted. And one of them told me, she did something with her hand
And she said, like, shush, old woman. And I was like, no, I'm not going to let this go. So I told her, excuse me, you will go back to the end of the queue because there's a queue that must be followed and the issue of my age does not arise. And she continued arguing with me, and I told her, you know, unfortunately, your stupidity will not allow you to get to the age that I am. And then it shook her, then she stopped. And then I told her, you will go back to the end of the queue. And she did. And everybody then clapped for me. But I was like, no, there's certain behavior that is unacceptable. She was cutting the queue, it was wrong. But I could have sat back, and it was wrong not only for me, it was wrong for everybody who had queued that morning. Yeah. But I could have kept quiet because she called me an old woman, because old woman is taken like an insult. I could have kept quiet, but I said, no, I will not be quiet about being called an old woman. And I'm actually not even old in the scheme of things, because older people start at 60. But she was probably in her late 20s. And unfortunately, that is the attitude. Those are the attitudes we need to work on. There's nothing wrong with being young, and there's nothing wrong with being old. But I think we need to get, there has to be a realization that the things that are happening and are not acceptable to older people are because maybe the music is loud, I've got a problem with my ear, and I could not be, I'm possibly not the only one with that problem. There's possibly somebody else with an ear problem. I don't like the content. Like Lawrence says, I'm traveling with my granddaughter. I don't want my granddaughter to watch this inappropriate content, or I just don't like it. I have paid for that matatu, I've paid for that public transport, and my rights are equal to the rights of the 13 other people in that bus. So I think we need to do something about ageism. We need to begin to tackle the issues of ageism, because it's ageism, which is the inappropriate targeting of a person on the basis of their age, discrimination, abuse, or inappropriate language. We need to address ageism from the root, so that then we stop getting these incidences coming up. And my last point is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with being young, and there's nothing wrong with being old.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Carol. There's nothing wrong with being young. There is nothing wrong with being old. Judy has another question for Lawrence, and she says, what are your future plans on how the elderly can be traveling fast and in comfort, I believe? Lawrence, what are your future plans on how the elderly can be traveling fast and in comfort?
Well, that's a difficult one to answer, because if I have the plan, the plan should be today. They should be traveling comfortably from today. But not unless some of these things, like the Carol was trying to say, that it's not only the bus, the means of transport, it also depends on the roads. So, you know, the connectivity from one destination to the other. That point is very, very, very important. That if you board a matatu or a bus from, say, New Monja, it can bring you all the way to Kabete, or it can bring you all to Kenyatta Hospital. And you build another one from Kibera, it can take you all the way to Mathare. The connectivity, that is very, very important. And also now the comfort of the kind of the design of the particular means you are using. Like the Carol has mentioned about we have mentioned about this tuk-tuk issue. The tuk-tuk issue, I find them from from City Stadium to the Central District. But you find also that those are very, very squeezed. But if they are expanded well, they are expanded well, they have enough space. The only my worry is now the road and the speed of a particular, because sometimes when we are saying we want to have an expressway, and then at the same time you put something that is not moving, then that is another impediment to the flow of the traffic. So I think when we are designing the mode of transport, we also should design the route that is very convenient for the public to travel in. And maybe possibly you put some sideway for the private sector and the motorbikes and the bicycle and the walking. All those ones should be well designed that if you want to use one, you are not going to impede the other one. So that is my take on that one.
Oh, thank you very much. When you talk about the language, again, we'll go back to the language, but this is just specifically for, do you think we should have what's the word I'm looking for? Not animation, but diagrams. Yes, diagrams that might aid the elderly in understanding. Again, you realize that as much as we say that Swahili is a national language and it's going to be spoken, and this is just an example in Kenya, you will find that unfortunately maybe there's one or two of our elderly persons that may not understand the language. Signs, and would that be a welcome idea, or is that too much information also on the public of the vehicles, the matatus, the buses? What are your thoughts, Lawrence?
Well, so there could be some signs, maybe possibly on the bus stop. If you have got a well-designated bus stop, yes, they can assist. Right now, we have got what we call the numbers and the number for certain routes and things like that. And also we have got personnel that aid the people, the commuters to get to know their destinations. But it is now the communication factor. Those people, you know, if the transport system is well structured, such that it is a company and a private friendly things, people are taken to school, you know, like, let's say a business like the hotel industries. People are taken to college to know how to approach people. Good morning, good afternoon, where are you going, these kind of things. But in the transport system, because they are private owned and you employ anybody from any quarter, the language people use is not standardized. That there is a language for a market, there is a language for matatu, there is a language for hotel. This is like that. Because they're in business, maybe possibly the people who are in this industry can have an initiative or can spend some money or take people to seminar to how to handle people, to handle children, to handle women, to handle elderly people, and things like that ones. That is what we are lacking. As Carlos said, some of these things is a moral fiber which has now broken down. So how are you going to change them? I don't know whether it's to police them or not, but I believe if people are educated that even the older people have paid, are going to pay for the services, yes, but talk to them nicely. Give them what they want. They don't want this obscene, you know, pictures, videos when they are traveling. In fact, the matatus which are very, you know, silent, other than the radio, you know, people prefer them, and you can see because the blaring music and things like that one, it is not conducive to the older people.
Mm-hmm. Carol, let me have the ask the last question to you, and this is in regards to Lawrence mentioned earlier that sometimes as an elderly person, it's very difficult for you to plan when you leave in the morning and the price is, let's say, 10 shillings or 50 shillings, and by the time you're coming back home, something has changed. Like in Nairobi here, there's a very common behavior where it drizzles a little and the price skyrockets. So Carol, how do we strike a balance in terms of transport? Because the persons running these matatus, the unions, sometimes what do they call them? They call them matatu what? The circles, yes, the matatu circles will tell you we have to make money. We have to cover our costs when there was like a dry spell, which means in the morning you paid this X amount of money, in the evening you're paying X plus, maybe because it's drizzled. How do we strike a balance with that? And this is to specifically help accommodate the elderly persons and also help them plan. Carol?
Okay, I think that the issue of the regulation of the matatu industry, which is where this happens more often, is a discussion that will go beyond this forum. Mm-hmm. And so there are issues of regulation that come into play. There are issues of policies that come into play, but the policies have to, for the policies to be adhered to, one, there has to be knowledge about them, but secondly, there has to be monitoring of the implementation, and that's where the regulators come in. So I think there's the issue of the price of matatus, the cost that shifts at will, is, like I said, a discussion that is probably going to take longer than this forum possibly could, but it's something that needs to be looked into, because there's too much. When something is unregulated, then it's at the whims of the people who run it. And it's very true. A little rain, the prices shoot up. And I don't know whether they shoot up because then the jams, the traffic jams increase, and therefore they use more fuel and more time. I don't know. But that's something that needs to be looked at. So for the issues of the older persons with regard to the price changes, then the discussions that go on around the regulation and the policies must of necessity include the older persons, because I think when their voice is missing from the planning and the discussions that underlie what we eventually see when the transport system plays out, means that the people making those decisions may not have the interests of the older persons in mind, or they may not even know the issues that affect older persons that they need to take into account, such as the timing of the vehicles vis-a-vis the cost. So one random example that comes to mind is if you know that there's the rush hour, the population that uses the vehicles at that time are the younger people. The older persons start using the vehicles, say at around 10 o'clock, then you could change the price at that time to accommodate them. Or you could ensure that there's adequate consideration for older persons who would need to use the public transport at 8 a.m. and they're not then affected by the fluctuation of the changes of the prices that happens along the way. So I would say those are my thoughts for now: the participation and also consideration of the issues that affect older persons as relate to the specific transport issues. And then very finally is that it's not a one-size-fits-all, because the different transport needs across the different geographical landscapes, the rural areas, the urban areas, needs to be taken into account, and how they affect the different population couches within those settings at any given time.
Thank you very much, Carol. Lawrence, I'll give you maybe a minute or less to give us your parting shots, if you have any, and then we're going to take a break.
Thank you very much. My only maybe to say that the policy maker should hear us, the older people. When they're making the policy of the transport, please kindly involve the people, the elderly people, the people with the disabilities, because they have got an input to put in, so that we can have a more inclusive and safer and nice transport system in our country and in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Lawrence is the chairperson for Elderly Society of Kenya, and Carol Agengo is from HelpAge. Thank you very much. Now, before we go to our next session, we're going to take a 10 minutes break. So we are going to come back here at exactly 11:02, according to my clock. And we are going to be discussing women in professionals. Remember, when these sessions are going on, as you listen in, you can type in your questions on our chat stream, and we'll try as much as possible to have them answered. We'll try as much as possible to find a solution together. My name is Becky Molimo. We'll see you back in 10 minutes.